When a man walks into a small restaurant with no cameras, no bodyguards, and no one recognizing him at first, and then sits down alone at a wobbly table by the window, you would never guess that this one visit was about to save a family, rescue a dying dream, and reunite two brothers who had not spoken in 22 years. This is the story of Marcelina Vega, a woman who woke up one Tuesday morning to find a letter sitting on her counter. A letter from the bank. A letter that said she had 60 days to pay $87,000, or lose the restaurant her late husband had worked his entire life to build. She had no money. She had no plan. She had a 16-year-old son who had given up his college scholarship just to stay and help her keep the lights on. And she had a restaurant full of loyal customers who loved her food but could not save her. That same morning, she hid the letter under the counter so her son would not see it. She put on her apron. She opened the doors. She did what she always did. She showed up. And then, at 11:47 in the morning, the front door opened. A man walked in alone. Big, quiet. Baseball cap pulled low. He stopped in the doorway, sniffed the air, and smiled to himself like he had just found something he didn't know he was looking for. He sat down at table 4. He ordered whatever she would eat herself. And then he looked at the wall, at the old black and white poster of Bruce Lee hanging by the coat hooks. And he went completely still. What happened next at that small table in that tiny restaurant in Fresno changed everything. And not just for Marcelina, not just for her son, Dante, but for a man living alone in Tucson, Arizona, who didn't even know any of this was coming. By the end of this story, someone is going to walk through that restaurant door and drop to his knees. A 16-year-old boy who has not cried once in 2 years is going to sit down on the cold floor and weep. And Marcelina is going to remember one tiny detail from that Tuesday morning, something she nearly missed, that will tell her exactly who Arnold Schwarzenegger really is when no one is watching. Stay with us for the whole story, because what Arnold did that day, he did in 4 parts. And the last part, the one nobody saw coming, is the one that will stay with you long after this video ends. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Marcelina Vega read it 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and slid it under the counter. She tucked it beneath the plastic tray where she kept rubber bands and pencils and a photograph of her late husband smiling on the day they opened the restaurant. The letter said she had 60 days. 60 days to pay $87,000 to the bank. 60 days before they came and locked the front door of Casa Rudy forever. Marcelina stood very still in the empty dining room. It was 6:15 in the morning. The chairs were still stacked upside down on the tables. The floor was damp from mopping. The smell of cilantro and warm tortillas drifted from the kitchen, where the stove had been going since 5. She pressed her hand flat against the wall. On that wall, between the window and the coat hooks, hung 6 photographs. Most of them were family. But there was one of Rudy holding baby Dante, one of Marcelina and Rudy at their wedding, both of them laughing at something off camera, one of Rudy at age 9 standing in front of a rusted mailbox outside a tiny house in Stockton. And then there was the other one. A poster, really, black and white, a young man in a fighting stance, intense eyes, a jawline like carved wood, 3 Chinese characters written down the side. Beneath the photograph, in plain block letters, it said, Bruce Lee. Rudy had loved that poster more than anything else in the restaurant, more than the hand-painted menu board, more than the clay pots his mother had sent from Oaxaca. When they were hanging things on the wall during that very first week, he had said, Bruce goes right there. right where everyone can see him from the door." He had smiled as he hammered the nail in. "So the first thing people see when they walk in is a man who refused to give up." Marcelina looked at the poster now. "I don't know what to do, Rudy," she whispered. She heard footsteps on the stairs. Her son, Dante, 16 years old, tall like his father, came through the back door in a wrinkled shirt, with his hair still flat from sleep. "Morning," he said, not looking up. "Morning, mijo." She tucked the letter deeper under the tray. Dante didn't need to know. Not yet. He had already given up enough for this place. He grabbed an apron from the hook. He moved to the kitchen without another word. In 2 hours, the lunch crowd would start arriving. In 4 hours, there would be a small line at the door. Not a long line, but a loyal one. Our Esperanza Fuentes, age 78, who came every Tuesday and Thursday, and always ordered the exact same thing. The Delgado brothers from the plumbing shop across the street. The nurses from the clinic 2 blocks over. And sometimes a stranger would walk in off the street. Someone who had never heard of Casa Rudy. Someone who just smelled the food through an open window and followed their nose inside. On this Tuesday, the Tuesday the letter came, one of those strangers would change everything. He arrived at 11:47 in the morning. He walked through the front door alone. And for one long, strange moment, Marcelina Vega stood behind the counter with a laminated menu in her hand, looked at the man's face, and could not remember how to speak. He was big. That was the first thing you noticed. And not just tall, though he was tall, but built like something constructed, not born. He wore a plain gray shirt, dark jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. No assistant walked behind him. No cameras followed him in. No ring of people formed around him the way you would expect from someone like him. He simply stood in the doorway, and he sniffed the air. Then he actually smiled. A real one. The kind that starts slow and takes over a person's whole face before they can stop it. "That smells incredible," he said. His voice was like gravel wrapped in velvet. His accent, even after so many decades in America, still carried that soft Austrian roll on every word. Marcelina opened her mouth. Nothing came out. He walked to table 4, the one by the window, the small one with the slightly wobbly leg that Dante had been meaning to fix for 2 months, and he sat down. He took off his cap and set it on the empty chair beside him. Then he looked around the restaurant slowly. Not the way a tourist looks, scanning for something worth photographing. The way a person looks when they are genuinely taking something in. Like they are searching for what is real. His eyes moved across the clay pots on the shelf. The hand-painted menu board above the pass-through, the checkered red tablecloths, the photographs on the wall. Then he stopped at the Bruce Lee poster. He went very still. Marcelina found her voice. "Welcome to Casa Rudy. Can I get you something to drink while you look at the menu?" He didn't answer right away. He was still looking at the poster. There was something in his expression she could not quite name. Not surprise, not happiness, exactly. Something older than both of those things. Something that lived deeper. Then he looked at her. "Water is fine," he said. "And whatever is good today. Whatever you would eat yourself. I trust you." She wrote nothing on her notepad. There was nothing to write. She already knew exactly what she was going to bring him. Rudy's recipe. The one she made entirely from memory because Rudy had never written it down, not once. Slow-cooked chicken in a sauce of dried chilies and dark chocolate and toasted cumin, served over white rice with fresh tortillas folded on the side. She went to the kitchen. Dante, she said quietly. He was chopping onions. He looked up with watering eyes. Arnold Schwarzenegger is sitting at table 4. Dante stared at her, but he set the knife down very slowly on the cutting board, the way a person sets something down when their hands are no longer sure they can be trusted. What? Shh. Mama, that's... I know what it is. Keep chopping. And make the good plate. The clay one, not the white ones. When Marcelina brought the water out, Arnold was leaning back in his chair with his arms folded, still looking at the wall. She set the glass down gently. He turned and thanked her. Then he pointed at the Bruce Lee poster. That photograph, he said. Is it yours? It was my husband's, she said. Was? She paused for just a second. One small breath. He passed away 2 years ago. Something moved across Arnold's face. His jaw tightened slightly. He nodded once, slowly and carefully, the way people nod when they are absorbing something that genuinely hurts them. I'm sorry, he said. He said it the way people say it when they actually mean it. Not as something to fill the silence. As something true. Thank you, she said. What was his name? Rodolfo. We called him Rudy. Arnold looked up at the restaurant name above the kitchen pass-through. He hadn't noticed it before this moment. Casa Rudy. He read it. He looked back at the poster. Then he looked at Marcelina, and his eyes were calm and quiet, and full of something she could not yet explain. Will you sit with me for a minute? He asked. When the food comes, if you have time. She looked around the restaurant. Esperanza was in her corner, already on her second cup of coffee, reading a paperback novel with a cracked spine. The lunch rush wouldn't arrive for another 20 minutes at least. I have a few minutes, she said. That was when everything began. The food arrived on the clay plate. Arnold looked at it the way you look at something you already know is going to be good before you have even tasted it. He picked up his fork, cut into the chicken, and took the first bite slowly. He was quiet for a moment. Then he set the fork down. He looked at the plate. Then at Marcelina. Unbelievable, he said softly, not like a compliment, like a confession. Marcelina sat across from him. She folded her hands on the table. She was not nervous, exactly. She was something else. Awake. Like every single part of her was paying attention all at once, leaning in without moving. Tell me about your husband, Arnold said. Tell me about Rudy and the poster. She looked at the wall. She had told this story 100 times before, to regulars, to new customers, to anyone who ever pointed at the poster and asked. But it felt different telling it now. She didn't know why. She took one quiet breath. Rudy grew up in Stockton. His family had nothing. His father picked crops. His mother cleaned houses. There were 6 kids, and never enough food. He told me once that when he was 8 years old, he found a Bruce Lee VHS tape in a dumpster outside a video rental store. The case was cracked, but the tape still worked. She paused. Arnold had stopped eating completely. He was listening the way that very few people ever listen, not waiting for his turn to speak, not planning his next sentence, just receiving every word as it came. He watched that tape every single day for an entire summer, she continued. He said it was never about the fighting. It was about how Bruce Lee carried himself. Like he knew exactly who he was. Like nothing in the world could tell him he was too small or too poor or born in the wrong place. She smiled softly at the poster. Rudy was 17 when he told his mother, I am going to build something. I don't know what yet, but I'll build something that feeds people and makes them feel like they matter. His mother thought he was a little crazy. Marcelina paused. He probably was. Arnold smiled. It was small and warm and real. He worked for 22 years to save the money, she went on. He worked in restaurant kitchens from the time he was 18 years old. Dishwasher first, then line cook, prep cook, sous chef. He never complained about any of it. Every extra dollar he put away. He kept a little green notebook where he tracked every single cent. He used to hold it up and say, "Marcelina, one day this notebook is going to become walls and a roof and a kitchen that feeds people." She touched the edge of the table gently. He was 42 when we finally opened. 5 years ago now. He cried that morning. Stood right there in the middle of this room and cried. He thought I didn't see him. I saw him. She felt the familiar tightness move through her chest. She breathed through it the way she had learned to do. He died 2 years later. His heart gave out. He was 44 years old. He never even saw the restaurant turn its first real profit. The dining room sat completely still around them. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled slowly past the window. In her corner, Esperanza turned a page of her book without looking up. Arnold unfolded his hands. He placed them flat on the table. He looked at the Bruce Lee poster for a long moment. Long enough that Marcelina began to wonder what he was seeing in it that she wasn't. Then he said, "I knew Bruce Lee." The words landed quietly, but they landed hard. Marcelina blinked. "I met him in 1970, Arnold said. I was 22 years old. I had just arrived in America. I had almost nothing. My English was embarrassing. I didn't know how to order food properly yet." A small laugh. "I walked into a gym in Los Angeles, and he was there, training alone. We talked. It was a short conversation. Maybe 15 minutes. But I have never forgotten a single word of it." He was quiet for just a moment. The restaurant held its breath. He looked at me. This big young Austrian kid who barely knew which city he was in yet. And he said something I have carried inside me every single day since then. Marcelina leaned forward without realizing she had moved. Arnold's voice dropped low, steady and certain, like something read from stone. He said, "Arnold, the greatest battles are the ones nobody sees." He looked at the poster. His eyes stayed there. "He meant the early mornings," Arnold said. "The training sessions when no one is watching. The years nobody celebrates. The work that happens long before the thing that finally gets the credit." He turned back to Marcelina. "Your husband understood that better than most people I have ever met. 22 years of invisible work. Nobody watching. Nobody clapping. Nobody writing about it. Just Rudy and his green notebook and where he was going." Marcelina pressed her lips together hard. She would not cry. Not here. Not yet. "He would have liked you," she said. Her voice came out smaller than she meant it to. Arnold looked at her steadily. "I would have liked him too." He picked up his fork again. They talked for a few more minutes about the food, and about Stockton, and about small things that felt large somehow. The kind of conversation that is ordinary and important at the same time. The kind you don't recognize as important until it is already over. Then the lunch rush began, and she had to get up. She did not know yet that the most important part of this visit had not happened. She did not know about the boy in the kitchen. Dante came out to refill the water glasses at 12:15. He kept his head down. He moved from table to table with a pitcher, quiet and efficient, not making eye contact with anyone. That was how he always moved through the dining room. Like someone who had learned to take up as little space as possible. Like someone practicing at being invisible. When he reached table 4, he poured, without looking up. "You're the son," Arnold said. Dante's hand stopped on the handle of the pitcher. He looked up slowly. His face did the thing faces do when a person is trying very hard to look like they don't care about something they care enormously about. His jaw was tight on purpose. His eyes were flat on purpose. Every part of him was working to appear unbothered. "Yeah," he said. "Dante," Marcelina said softly from behind the counter. A gentle warning, the kind only a mother can deliver in a single word. Dante looked at her, and then back at the man at table 4. Arnold gestured to the empty chair across from him, the same chair where Marcelina had been sitting an hour earlier. "Sit down for a second." "I'm working," Dante said. "Sit down." There was something in Arnold's voice that was not a demand and not a request. It lived somewhere between the two. It was the voice of a person who had spent decades in rooms where things were decided, where outcomes were shaped, where the person speaking simply expected to be heard. Not because of ego, because they had earned it the hard way and everybody in the room knew it. Dante pulled out the chair and sat down. Arnold looked at him for a moment without speaking, not studying him the way adults usually studied Dante, measuring him, sizing him up, looking for the trouble they expected to find. Just looking. See, like he was reading something written in a language most people didn't know existed. "How old are you?" Arnold asked. 16. "You want to be here? In this restaurant?" The question arrived without warning and hit harder than it had any right to. Dante glanced at his mother for just a fraction of a second. A flicker. Then he looked back down at the table. "It's the family business," he said. "That's not what I asked." The dining room was quiet. Esperanza had stopped pretending to read her book. The Delgado brothers at table 2 were looking at their food very carefully. A long pause opened up, wide enough to fall into. "I don't know," Dante said finally. His voice came out younger than he meant it to. Younger and more honest. Arnold nodded. He didn't flinch from the answer. He didn't rush to fill the silence with something reassuring. And he just received it the way you receive something heavy, simply and carefully, without dropping it. "What do you want to be?" Arnold asked. "Not for your mother. Not for your father's memory. Not for anyone else in this room. For you. What do you want?" Dante stared at the tablecloth. It was such a simple question. 4 words. And yet nobody, not one single person in 2 years, had asked him that. Not his teachers. Not his relatives. Not the guidance counselor at school who had called his scholarship deferral, very mature and admirable. Not anyone. He answered so quietly, it was almost not a sound at all. "An engineer," he said. "I want to design things. Bridges, buildings, things that are meant to last 100 years. Arnold said nothing. He waited. Dante looked up. "Things that hold weight," he added. Like he needed Arnold to understand the specific thing he meant. Not just buildings. Things that hold weight. Things people depend on. "Then why are you here?" Arnold asked. The question was not cruel. It was not careless. But it landed like something sharp anyway, because it was the exact question Dante had been asking himself every single morning for 2 years and never once let himself answer out loud. His eyes went sharp and fast. "Because someone has to be." He pushed back the chair. He walked to the kitchen. The door swung once behind him and settled still. The dining room held its breath. Marcelina watched the kitchen door. She did not move. She did not explain. Some things do not need explaining to the right person. When she finally turned back to Arnold, she expected to find the uncomfortable look people get after an awkward moment, the polite smile, the eyes searching for a safe new subject. He didn't look uncomfortable at all. He looked like a man who had just understood something completely. He had a scholarship, Marcelina said quietly. She hadn't planned to say it. It simply came out. Full scholarship to Cal Poly, engineering program. He deferred it when Rudy died. He was going to go this coming fall, but she stopped. She did not want to say the rest. The letter under the tray, the $87,000, the 60 days. But Arnold was watching her with those steady, patient eyes, and something inside her shifted in a way she could not explain or stop. "We're in trouble," she said. "The restaurant. We might not be here in 60 days. The words felt enormous out loud, and she had not said them to anyone. Not to Dante, not to her sister, not to Esperanza, who noticed everything. Arnold was quiet for a long moment. "Rudy's dream," he said. "Yes." "And Dante's future." "Yes." He nodded once. He looked at the Bruce Lee poster one final time. Then he picked up the empty clay plate and turned it slowly in his large hands, looking at the potter's mark pressed into the bottom. He set it down carefully, like it was worth something. He reached into his wallet. He left cash on the table. More than the bill. Much more. Then he stood and reached across the table and shook Marcelina's hand. His hand was enormous and warm. "This is a good place," he said. "Your husband built something real." He walked toward the door. He stopped. He turned back. "May I use your phone?" he said. "Mine died. I just need a minute." She handed him the phone from behind the counter without thinking. He took it with a nod. Then he walked to the far corner of the dining room, the corner by the coat hooks, directly below the Bruce Lee poster, and he turned slightly away from the room. Marcelina tried not to listen. She carried dirty dishes to the bus tray. She refilled the napkin holder at table 2. She wiped down the counter in long, slow circles, even though it was already clean. She did everything she could think of to keep her hands busy, and her ears pointed somewhere else entirely. But the restaurant was small. She heard fragments. "Yes, it's me. Listen carefully." A pause. "Today. I'm serious. Today." Another pause, longer this time. "I know what I'm asking. I know exactly what I'm asking." His voice was low, but certain, and the voice of a man who did not repeat himself. "Fresno. Small restaurant, family-owned. The amount outstanding is—" He turned slightly further toward the wall. She lost the number. "Yes, all of it. Call the foundation first. Then get the scholarship office on the line before end of week. I need both handled. Not next week. This week." Marcelina folded a napkin she had already folded. A long pause on Arnold's end. "One more thing," he said. His voice shifted slightly, quieter, more careful, like he was now asking for something that mattered even more than everything before it. "I need you to find someone for me. His name is Tomas Vega. Last known address was somewhere near Tucson, Arizona. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago. His brother's name was Rodolfo Vega. Went by Rudy. Passed away 2 years back." Another pause. "I need Tomas found quickly and carefully. He doesn't know this call is happening." Silence on Arnold's end while the other person spoke. "Because it matters," Arnold said simply. "That's why." He hung up. He walked back to the counter and set the phone down gently. He looked at Marcelina. She looked at him. For one suspended moment, neither of them spoke. "Thank you," he said. "Of course," she said. She wanted to ask. Every part of her wanted to ask. Her mouth was already forming the first word of the question, but something held her back. Some deep and quiet instinct that told her to be still, to wait, to trust the thing that was already in motion, even if she couldn't see its shape yet. He smiled at her. It was different from the smile at the door. That one had been easy and public. This one was private. The smile of a man who has just decided something and is at peace with the decision. Then he walked out. The bell above the front door rang once, light and small. He was gone. Marcelina stood at the counter for a long moment. The lunch rush had thinned to almost nothing. 2 tables left. A bus outside hissed past the window. Dante came through the kitchen door, wiping his hands on his apron. Did he leave? Yes. Dante nodded slowly. He went back to the kitchen without another word. From her corner, Esperanza called out without looking up from her book. That was a big man. Yes, said Marcelina. He had kind eyes. Yes. Esperanza turned a page. Something good is coming, she said. Plain and easy, the way she said most things. Like she was reading a fact from a page, rather than predicting the future. I feel it in my hands. My hands have never once been wrong. Marcelina looked down at the phone on the counter. She thought about the words she had heard from across the room. Foundation, Scholarship Office, Thomas Vega, Tucson. She did not know who Thomas Vega was. She had never heard that name in her life. She thought about asking Dante. Then she thought, not yet. She tucked the name away carefully, like the letter under the tray, somewhere safe, somewhere she could find it again when the time came. She straightened her apron. She went back to work. And for the next 3 weeks, nothing happened at all. Or at least, nothing she could see. The days after Arnold's visit felt ordinary in a way that hurt. Same tables, same orders, same tired Tuesday afternoons when the lunch rush died and the dinner crowd hadn't started, and Marcelina would sit in the kitchen with cold coffee and stare at the wall and think about a phone call she wasn't supposed to have heard. The letter stayed under the tray. 42 days left. 36. 29. She found herself counting backward, without meaning to. She found herself lying awake at 2 in the morning doing math she already knew didn't add up. $87,000. The numbers sat in the dark above her bed, like something with weight and edges. Dante worked harder. She noticed, but said nothing. He came downstairs earlier each morning. He stayed later each night. He fixed the wobbly leg on table 4 without being asked, crouching beneath it with a screwdriver and a piece of folded cardboard for 20 minutes until it sat perfectly level. He touched up the peeling paint on the front door frame with a small brush and the leftover paint from the can in the storage closet. He did these things quietly, without announcement, without asking for anything back. She watched him, and her heart hurt in 2 directions at once. One night she heard him moving around in his room very late. She knocked softly. "Mijo?" "I'm fine, Mama." "What are you doing?" A pause, the kind with something behind it. "Just looking at stuff online?" She opened the door a crack. He was at his desk, his laptop open. She could see a university website on the screen before he clicked away from it quickly. The Cal Poly Engineering homepage. She had seen it only for a second, but she knew it immediately. "Dante, it's nothing. Good night, Mama." She closed the door. She stood in the hallway for a moment with her palm pressed flat against the wall, which was what she did when she needed something solid, something that was not going anywhere. Esperanza came in on Thursday as always. She ordered the same thing as always. When Marcelina brought her coffee, she looked up from her book and said plainly, "Still waiting?" "For what?" "For the good thing. I told you it was coming." "Esperanza, with respect, your hands said the same thing the week before the pipe burst in the men's room." "That was good. We got a new pipe. Marcelina laughed. A real one. It surprised her, the weight it lifted, even for just a few seconds. Then, on a Tuesday morning, exactly 3 weeks after Arnold had walked through the front door, a black car pulled slowly to the curb outside the restaurant. A man in a dark suit stepped out. He carried a folder and a large envelope tucked under one arm. He walked to the front door and knocked, even though the sign clearly said, "Open." He stepped inside and looked around carefully. "I'm looking for Marcelina Vega," he said. "That's me." He opened the folder. He set a single document on the counter and pointed to a line near the bottom. "The outstanding loan and back rent on this property," he said, "has been paid in full, anonymously, as of yesterday afternoon." Marcelina looked at the number on the document. She looked at the line that said, "Balance due." It said, 0. The man placed the large envelope on top of the folder. "There is also a $40,000 grant for kitchen equipment. And this." He pointed at the envelope. "That one is personal. For you specifically." She picked it up. She opened it slowly. She read the first line of the letter inside. And then her legs went out from under her, and she sat right down on the floor of Casa Rudy. The man in the suit helped her up. He was professional but genuinely kind about it. He offered water. She shook her head. He offered a chair. She shook her head again. She just needed a moment, and she took it, standing at the counter with both hands pressed flat on the surface, breathing in and breathing out until the room stopped tilting. Then she read the letter. It was handwritten, and the letters were large and slightly uneven, not the polished script of a publicist or a carefully worded statement from an assistant. Real handwriting. The kind that comes from a real person sitting at a real desk holding a real pen, deciding with every sentence exactly what they want to say. It began, "Dear Marcelina, I want to tell you what I saw when I walked into Casa Rudy. I saw a man who worked 22 years in silence for something he believed in with his whole heart. I saw his dream alive in every inch of that room, in the clay pots, and the painted menu board, and the poster on the wall, and the food on the plate, and the way his son moves through the kitchen like he was born, knowing where everything belongs. I have been in rooms full of famous people, powerful people, people the whole world stops to look at. That restaurant, with its wobbly table and its cold floor and its smell of chili and dark chocolate, is more real than most of those rooms ever were. Please keep it." She stopped. She pressed the letter against her chest for a long moment. Then she kept reading. "I also saw your son. Dante is angry the way a river is angry when someone builds a wall across it. The water does not stop wanting to go where it was always going. It just builds up behind the wall until something gives. Dante needs to go to Cal Poly. He needs to design bridges and buildings and things meant to carry weight for 100 years. He is not meant to stay behind that counter. Not yet. Not at 16. There is time for all things. But right now, he needs to go." She looked up. The man in the suit was studying the Bruce Lee poster on the far wall with great and careful interest, giving her every inch of privacy she needed. She kept reading. "The scholarship at Cal Poly has been re-established in your son's name through the foundation. He can start this fall if he chooses. Full funding, completely covered. This is not charity, Marcelina. This is investment. The world will need what Dante knows how to build." She was crying now. She did not try to stop it. "There is one more thing. It cannot be written in a letter because letters are too small for it. It will arrive at your restaurant on Friday evening at 6 o'clock. Please be there. Please have Dante there with you. I cannot come myself. My schedule is a disaster, and I have already taken up far too much of your Tuesday. But what arrives on Friday is the most important thing I did. More important than any of the rest. I need you to trust me until then." The letter was signed simply, in that same large, uneven hand, Arnold. She folded it slowly along its original creases. She held it in both hands the way you hold something you do not want to put down and are not yet sure where to keep. The man in the suit left his card on the counter. He said all the paperwork was filed, and nothing more was required from her. Then he left quietly, closing the door behind him without letting the bell ring. Marcelina sat at table 4 for a very long time. Friday arrived the way all important days arrive, looking exactly like an ordinary one. The lunch crowd came and went. Esperanza was in her corner. The Delgado brothers came in at 1 and left at 1:30. Dante cleaned the kitchen after close, moving between the counters with his headphones in, nodding slowly to music only he could hear. At 5:30, Marcelina turned the sign on the door from open to closed. She locked the latch. She stood in the quiet dining room and looked at the clock above the pass-through. Then they waited. 6 o'clock came. 6:03. 6:08. Dante looked up from his phone. "Mama, what exactly are we waiting for?" "Someone is coming." "Who?" "I don't know exactly." He gave her the look teenagers give their mothers when their mothers are being deliberately mysterious. She gave him the look mothers give their children when patience is not optional. 6:14. Headlights swept slowly across the front window. A car pulled to the curb outside. A dark sedan. The engine cut off. A moment passed, long enough that Marcelina held her breath without meaning to. Then the car door opened. A man stepped out onto the sidewalk. He was tall, with Rudy's wide shoulders and Rudy's particular way of walking, deliberate and unhurried, each step placed with care, like a man who had learned long ago that rushing never once got him anywhere worth going. He wore a plain blue button-down shirt. His hair was gray at the temples. He was perhaps 50 years old, and he carried himself like someone who had been through something large and had come out the other side of it changed. He stood on the sidewalk, and he looked at the sign above the restaurant door. Casa Rudy. He read it. He read it again. And then something in his face broke open in a way that faces only break open when something inside them has been held closed for far too long. His chin dropped slightly. His shoulders shifted. And 22 years of carrying something heavy showed themselves all at once in the space of 3 seconds. He put his hand flat on the glass door. Marcelina unlocked it before he could knock. She had never seen this man before in her life, but she already knew exactly who he was. She knew the shape of his jaw and the darkness of his eyes, and the way he held his mouth when he was trying not to fall apart. She had seen all of those things every single day for 20 years on the face of the man she had loved. "You're Thomas," she said. He nodded. He could not speak yet. "You're Rudy's brother." "Yes." The word came out cracked and uneven, like something that had been stored somewhere airless for 2 decades and was only now being let out to breathe. Dante had come to stand in the kitchen doorway. He looked at this stranger, and he looked at his mother. His face carried the question his voice could not form yet. "Dante," Marcelina said softly, "this is your uncle." Dante went completely still. Thomas looked at the boy. This boy he had never once met. This boy who had his brother's eyes exactly. The same depth, the same steadiness, the same quiet fire burning a few layers down beneath the surface. He pressed his fist gently against his mouth for just a moment. Then he held out his hand. Not to shake. He was holding something in it. An envelope. Inside, Dante would come to learn, was his official letter of acceptance to Cal Poly's School of Engineering, and a full scholarship funded entirely by the Arnold Schwarzenegger Foundation for Education. Below the scholarship details, see a single line handwritten by Arnold himself on the foundation letterhead. "Your father built something real. Now go build something great." Dante took the envelope. He looked at it. He looked at this man with his father's eyes standing in the doorway of his father's restaurant. He looked at his mother. And then Dante Vega, who had not cried once, not a single time since the morning they buried his father 2 years ago, sat down slowly on the floor of Casa Rudy and wept. Tomas sat down beside him on that cold, hard floor without a moment's hesitation. And in the corner above the coat hooks, beneath the warm yellow light that Rudy had chosen himself from a hardware store catalog, Bruce Lee looked out from his poster with those fierce and certain eyes that had started everything. Later, weeks later, is when everything had settled into a new and different kind of normal. Marcelina would sit at table 4 with cold coffee and try to count what Arnold had actually done. There were 4 things. The first was the loan. $87,000, cleared through the California Small Business Relief Foundation without a single condition attached. Casa Rudy was safe. The dream was safe. The door would not be locked. The second was the grant. $40,000 for a new refrigeration unit, a replacement stove, and a small outdoor patio that Dante designed himself before he left for college. It was the first structure he ever designed. Small but precise, every measurement exact and deliberate. The contractor who built it called Marcelina afterward and said he had never once worked from plans drawn by a 16-year-old, and he wanted her to know the kid was something special. The third was the scholarship. Dante started at Cal Poly in September. He came home on weekends and sat at the counter while Marcelina cooked and told her about tension calculations and load-bearing angles and the physics of things that have to hold weight for 100 years without failing. He talked with his hands when he explained things, exactly the way Rudy always had. The fourth thing could not be measured in any dollar amount. Thomas. But Arnold had tracked him down through old immigration records and a quiet network of careful phone calls that his assistant later described as the most determined 48 hours of research their office had ever conducted. Tomas had left the family over a fight that started when he and Rudy were young men. A fight about money and wounded pride and all the small, sharp things that become enormous when 2 people love each other deeply and have never once learned how to say it. He moved to Arizona. The years passed. When Rudy died, nobody had known how to reach him. For 2 full years, Thomas had been living in Tucson, carrying the particular weight of a goodbye he never got to give. He moved to Fresno in October. He learned the kitchen slowly and without complaint. He was not as gifted a cook as Rudy had been, not yet, but he was getting better every week. He fixed things around the restaurant the way Rudy always had, noticing what was broken before anyone asked, appearing the next morning with the right tool already in hand. Casa Rudy stayed open. On the evening she finally understood all 4 things laid end to end, what they meant together, what they added up to. Marcelina looked at the Bruce Lee poster on the wall for a long, quiet moment. She thought about what Arnold had told her that afternoon. The words Bruce Lee had said to a 22-year-old Austrian kid in a Los Angeles gym more than 50 years ago. The greatest battles are the ones nobody sees. And then something small and specific floated up from the back of her memory. Something she had not thought about since the day it happened. Arnold had said his phone died, but she remembered now, clearly, without any doubt, that before he walked out the front door that Tuesday, His phone had been sitting on the counter, and the screen had lit up on its own. A notification, bright and sharp for just a second before it faded. The battery had been fine the entire time. He had never needed to borrow her phone. He had simply wanted to make the calls from the corner of the room, quietly, without her seeing his face while he made them, without giving her anything to thank him for before he had even done it. He just wanted to help. That was all. No scene, no credit, no moment at the door where she grabbed his hand and told him what it meant. Just a man in a corner, below a poster of Bruce Lee fighting a battle nobody was meant to see. Marcelina smiled. She looked at the poster for one more long moment. "He would have liked you too," she said quietly. She wasn't entirely sure anymore whether she was talking to the poster or to the restaurant itself or to Rudy, somewhere in the walls of the place he had built with 22 years of invisible and uncelebrated work. Maybe all three. The front door opened. The bell rang once, light and clean. The first customer of the morning walked in, stopped in the doorway, and sniffed the air. Marcelina straightened her apron. She went to work. Before you go, drop a comment right now and tell me where you are watching from. I want to know. Whether you are watching from a small town or a big city, from across the world or right down the street. Say hello. This community is full of good people, and I want to hear from you. And if this story moved you even a little, if it made you feel something real, please hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it helps more than you know. Every like tells the world that stories about kindness and quiet courage are worth sharing. If you are new here, welcome. Hit subscribe and join a community that believes one good person can change everything. Because they can. Rudy proved it with 22 years of invisible work. Arnold proved it with a borrowed phone and a corner of a small restaurant. And you prove it every single day in ways you probably never even notice. Spread this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. You never know whose Tuesday morning this story might change. And while you are here, click the video appearing on your screen right now. See, because the next story is just as powerful as this one. And trust me, you do not want to miss it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Now go be somebody's Arnold today.